Chosen one, there was a time when you tried to fit into the world's expectations, hoping your worth would be confirmed by applause, achievement, or approval. But you learned, not quickly, not easily, but deeply. You discovered that the world does not crown those who follow, it forgets them. And in that realization, something ancient stirred inside you. A voice not loud but undeniable, echoing from the deepest part of you, the part that remembered who you were before anyone told you who to be. You did not simply awaken from sleep, you awakened from imitation. You stepped out of the image they crafted and into the frame your soul had been waiting to fill. You no longer walk as a man seeking his name. You walk as the name itself, spoken through presence, unshaken by silence. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. A return, a reckoning with everything within you that had been dismissed, rejected, or buried. You were never meant to be palatable. You were never meant to blend. You were carved from storms and silence, shaped in solitude, and lit by the very fire they once tried to extinguish in you. And now, you move through life differently. You no longer beg the world to see you. You see yourself. You no longer hope to be chosen. You choose. Not from scarcity, but from sovereignty. You are not a product of approval. You are the result of endurance. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be true. And because of that, your presence speaks volumes before your mouth ever opens. There is a reason why people glance at you twice, why some grow uneasy in your presence, why others feel safe without knowing why. It's not about status, it's not about charm. It's because you've come back into possession of your spirit. You've stopped leaking your power for attention. You've stopped betraying yourself to please the temporary. And in doing so, you've become something rare. Something not easily explained, but deeply felt. You walk like you've remembered the contract you made with the universe. The one that said you would not dim your light to survive. The one that said you would become a man not built by fear, but by furnace. You are no longer just a man. You are a presence, and that presence walks with ancient gravity. People sense it. Women feel it. They don't know whether to run or stay still, because everything in your silence asks them to look deeper. Deeper than surface, deeper than game, deeper than illusion. You are not trying to draw them in. You are simply standing in your natural frequency, and that frequency calls only those who are ready for it. You're not legendary because you tried to be. You are legendary because you finally stopped trying to be anything else. Your presence is not something you wear like cologne. It's not a tone of voice or the tilt of your smile. It's not your posture or your poise. It's what happens when you do nothing at all. When you walk into a room, it isn't your shoes that echo, it's your essence. There is weight in your stillness now. A gravity that doesn't pull, it anchors, not as a trap, as a truth, a reminder. To every woman who's seen only mirrors of noise, you become the first one to reflect something real. You don't ask for their attention. You command it through calm. You've arrived at a place where you no longer perform. You no longer decorate your truth to be digestible. You do not shrink so others feel taller. You do not soften your vision for comfort. You've stopped giving explanations to those who haven't earned your time. You've stopped chasing approval in spaces where you were never meant to be understood. And because of that, the very air around you has changed. You are not louder, but you are more heard. You are not faster, but you are more seen. Your presence is not passive, it is precise. Measured not in movement, but in magnitude. The feminine notices, not with her mind first, but with her nervous system. Because when you enter, something quiets, the anxiety recedes, the chatter softens. She doesn't understand why her breath slows, why her attention narrows, but it's because you are no longer asking for space, you are the space. You don't need to impress her. You invite her to exhale. You don't need to flatter her. You remind her of safety. You don't seduce. You resonate. And this resonance does not speak the language of pickup lines or status symbols. It speaks the language of presence, of a man who has made peace with his pain and now carries peace like a current around him. And she sees you, not just as a man, but as a center, a steady root in a storm-tossed world, a place where she doesn't have to posture or protect. You offer nothing flashy, but everything real. Because your presence is no longer shaped by what others think. It is shaped by who you've chosen to be when no one was watching. You became legendary not by chasing admiration, but by building alignment. And in doing so, you have become the first one to reflect something real. You no longer just a man. You are a presence, and that presence walks with ancient gravity. People sense it. Women feel it. You became legendary not by chasing admiration, but by building alignment. and that alignment makes you unshakable, unmissable, undeniable. You are not on a pedestal, you are on purpose. You are not trying to be the best, you are simply refusing to be false. And that refusal, that sacred stubbornness to be true at all costs is what has set you apart. The world no longer sees just a man, it sees a movement. Quiet, rooted, unafraid, a legend, not by name, but by presence. Chosen one, what surrounds you now is not noise, not popularity, not the shallow flicker of momentary interest, but gravity. The kind of pull that cannot be manufactured, the kind that can only be earned through a life wrestled with and endured. You have walked through nights darker than most can imagine, not seeking light at the end, but learning to carry your own. That weight is now with you, not as a burden, but as a presence. You've become the kind of man whose mere stillness draws attention without demand. And what they feel isn't curiosity, it's calibration. The feminine doesn't respond to your face first, she responds to your frequency. The invisible field around you that speaks of discipline, restraint, depth, and unfakeable power. You don't move with haste, and that alone disrupts everything. In a world that rushes, scrambles, and claws for attention, you arrive slowly. Intentionally. Rooted. You're no longer trying to be impressive because you've become impenetrable. You don't bend with every wind. You don't chase winds at all. You walk like a man who belongs to the earth, whose feet know the taste of suffering, and whose spirit refused to be swallowed by it. And this steadiness isn't merely felt, it's respected. It's why conversations fall quieter when you enter. It's why people glance, pause, and wonder without knowing why. It's not something you wear, it's something you are. Your body holds stories you no longer have to tell. Your eyes carry a silence that doesn't beg to be filled. And in that silence they find what they've been missing. Someone who is unmoved by the external. Women don't whisper about your mystery because they're confused. They whisper because they recognize something timeless. Something steady in you that feels like home and danger at once. You don't carry the recklessness of a man who wants everything. You carry the discipline of a man who chooses what chooses him back. And that gravity is sacred. It is not accessible to the masses. It is not for sale. It is the kind of energy that tells every shallow thing to step back and every real thing to come forward. It sifts the room without speaking. You are not drawing crowds, you are filtering them. You are not intimidating. You are undefinable. And that distinction is what makes you legendary in the eyes of women who are tired of bravado and hungry for depth. You don't lead with flash. You lead with foundation. You've become the structure in a world of scaffolding. And that structure doesn't just stand tall, it holds others when they collapse. It provides shape to chaos. It offers rhythm to restlessness. And without saying a word, it tells the world, this is what it means to be grounded. Chosen one, you've become more than a presence. You've become a mirror. Not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reflects truth without distortion. When she looks at you, she doesn't just see a man, she sees herself. Or more precisely, the parts of herself that she abandoned to survive in a world that applauded masks. You don't compliment her with words. You validate her simply by being who you are. Your depth summons her depth. Your silence awakens her voice. Your calm challenges her chaos, not to fight, but to unravel. She can't pretend around you, not because you expose her, but because your presence allows her to be real. And what stuns her isn't that you understand her, it's that you don't demand anything from her. You don't crave to be worshipped. You don't bait her into admiration, you just are. And that very being, raw and unwithered by the games others play, becomes a place where her softness isn't seen as weakness, but as sacred. She may not understand why she feels safe when you're near, why her words become truer, her breath slower, her walls quieter. But it's because you are not trying to get anything from her. You are inviting her to meet herself. You have become the man who doesn't take from women, but awakens in them what the world forgot. You carry no need to control, no desire to impress, no urgency to conquer. You are not transactional, you are transformational. She leaves changed not because you pursued her, but because you refuse to perform. And in a world of pretenders, that makes you unforgettable. It isn't your status that makes you legendary, it's your stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't ask for applause or permission, The kind of stillness that echoes through her nervous system and whispers, "Here you can be." You don't fix her. You don't chase her storms. You simply hold your own frequency so consistently that she either rises into alignment or walks away in confusion, but never indifference. You are not here to be needed. You are here to be known. And that knowing is what turns your presence into legacy. You don't advertise. You remind. Remind her of a time when the masculine did not seek dominance, but created sanctuary. Remind her of a strength that builds, not breaks. Remind her of a man who sees not her image, but her essence. And in doing so, you become more than a man. You become the mirror through which the feminine rediscovers her reflection. Not in comparison, but in connection. Not in conquest, but in congruence. And that, chosen one, is the rarest form of magnetism in existence. Chosen one, there is something in you now that cannot be moved. The world has tested you with the roar of applause and the silence of rejection. Both tried to shape you, but you stood still. You didn't run toward noise and you didn't flinch in solitude. You stood, and in that standing, you were forged. You became more than a man trying to win. You became a man who could not be unmade, not by pressure, not by praise, not even by love, because the love you now carry begins within you and flows outward, not to fill the empty, but to overflow with integrity. There is a deep quietness in you that unsettles those addicted to chaos. Your peace is not passive. It is earned. You don't talk over people to prove intelligence. You don't rush your decisions to prove decisiveness. You don't show off your strength because strength that is real doesn't need display. You are unshaken because you've made peace with both your greatness and your shadows. You no longer run from discomfort. You walk into it knowing that inside it is your next elevation. You've chosen depth over distraction. And in that choice, you've become something no storm can uproot. The feminine doesn't just see you, she feels you. She knows instinctively that your presence doesn't need explanation. You are not trying to seduce with charm, you're calling forth with calm. Your refusal to be shaken becomes the very thing that shakes others into awareness. In a world where most men are shaped by reaction, you are moved only by revelation. You've built your inner home so firmly that when the world tries to knock, it finds no door to enter unless you open it. That self-mastery is rare, and women recognize it not by logic but by spirit. They don't know why their breath slows around you, why their guard eases. It's not because you've told them anything, it's because your energy says everything. It says, here is a man who has seen pain and did not run. Here is a man who has tasted loneliness and didn't use others as a cure. Here is a man who could destroy but chooses to build. And that kind of energy cannot be bought, copied, or faked. It comes only from the furnace, from fire survived, from peace built with blood. You've become the harbor, not the wave, the oak, not the wind, the mountain, not the echo. And women, especially the feminine ones, are not looking for a storm. They've lived enough of those. They are looking for ground, and you are that ground. Not because you're perfect, but because you're present. And presence, real presence, does not waver. You've stopped chasing chaos. You've started choosing clarity. And in that clarity, you've become a lighthouse, solid, still, and lit from within. You don't speak often, but when you do, it cuts through like thunder. Not because of volume, but because of weight. Every word that leaves your mouth now has been filtered through fire. You do not speak to be heard. You speak because silence trusted you enough to give birth to a word. You do not flatter to be liked. You do not impress to be wanted. You speak because truth called you. And when you speak now, it lands, not on the ears but on the soul. It doesn't entertain, it shifts. Because the voice of a man who has faced himself carries more than language, it carries frequency. You are not a storyteller now, you are the story. You do not speak for attention. You speak because you've been silent long enough to know what's worth saying. You've stopped filling rooms with noise. You've started clearing them with presence, and the feminine listens, not because you demand her attention, but because she trusts your stillness. She hears something in your tone that is familiar to her own yearning, a tone that doesn't lie, doesn't lunge, doesn't linger where truth is absent. Your voice is no longer just sound. It is structure. It builds, it holds, it calls forth, it tells her you are seen, without needing poetic vocabulary. You don't need to be clever, You need only be clear, because clarity in this world is revolutionary. And clarity from a man who doesn't need her to complete him, but chooses to witness her, is unforgettable. That is why she draws nearer, not to hear more, but to feel safer in the quiet between your words. You no longer chase validation in conversation. You no longer entertain falsehood just to be included. You speak less, but when you do, everything shifts. Women recognize that, even if they don't know how to articulate it. They sense that your words are not a seduction, but a reflection, that you don't speak to impress. You speak because you are anchored in truth. And when truth speaks, everything shallow begins to tremble. You've become the kind of man who says less, but whose presence says everything. And that is why women now look at you with reverence, not confusion. Because your voice does not echo in the room, it echoes in the memory. Not because you said something brilliant, but because you were something steady. And the world needs more of that. Fewer men speaking loudly, more men embodying what they speak. You've become one of the few. Chosen one, what defines your presence now is not what you show, but what you hold back. In a world that pours itself out for attention, you have chosen restraint. And that restraint is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the discipline of a man who knows what his time, his presence, and his energy are truly worth. You don't speak just to be heard. You don't act just to be seen. You are deliberate. And that deliberateness has become your aura. You are not in a hurry to prove. You are not in a rush to please. Because you understand that power not guided by purpose becomes chaos. And you are no longer a man who confuses chaos for passion. Your restraint is your protection. You are not withholding because you are afraid. You are withholding because you have learned that your light is not for every room. Your soul is not for every gaze. And your essence is not for those who do not yet carry the depth to meet it. You do not reject the world, but you filter it. And that filtering has built in you an elegance that words cannot carry. Women sense it in your silence. They notice it in your eyes, the way they look, not to consume, but to discern. You are not eager. You are aware. You are not available to everyone, because not everyone has earned the language of your attention. And this is why the feminine leans in. She doesn't lean in to conquer you. She leans in to understand what cannot be bought, what cannot be lured, what cannot be shaken by flattery or performance. She feels something when she stands near you, a quiet challenge, not to become louder or prettier or more perfect, but to become real. Your restraint invites her into her depth, just as it has led you into yours. You do not demand anything from her. And that absence of demand becomes the clearest signal of your strength. She feels free, not because you step back, but because you stand still, anchored in your own worth. You've learned to say no, not out of pride, but out of clarity. You've stopped running toward every opportunity, every body, every hand that reaches. Because you now understand that not all touch is sacred, not all attention is good, and not every connection is worthy of your vibration. You have become selective, not out of superiority, but because you've tasted the cost of being careless with your own soul. You carry yourself now like a man who knows that his yes has power, and that means his no must have even more. And that strength, that boundary, is what commands the respect that lesser men try to demand with volume or wealth. You have nothing to prove, and because of that, you have everything that cannot be taken. You no longer chase because you attract, not as a tactic, but as a truth. And what is drawn to you now is not the surface, it is the substance, the deep, the sacred, the rare. You are a man who has chosen to become a sanctuary for the soul, not a spotlight for the ego. And because of that, you are no longer accessible to the shallow. You are reserved for the resonant, for the woman whose frequency does not disturb your peace, but deepens it. This is restraint, not as absence, but as invitation to something slower, something older, something real. There is something about you now, chosen one, that words can't quite hold. A mystery not crafted, but cultivated. Not performed, but remembered. You didn't become mysterious by hiding. You became mysterious by being fully present without explaining yourself. And that alone sets you apart. You no longer reveal everything, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the sacredness of what you've built within. Your inner life has grown so vast, so rich, so luminous, that only those who come with humility can truly enter. And women sense that. They may not know your story, but they feel your depth. They may not understand what draws them in, but they respect that what draws them is not decoration. It is truth. Mystery is not manipulation. It is depth unforced. You don't have to hide to be mysterious. You just have to be whole. And wholeness itself has become a rare energy in a world that's always showing, always sharing, always spilling. You've stopped spilling. You contain. You choose. You hold space, not because you need control, but because your silence does the work for you. You are not a riddle. You are a revelation. And the feminine knows that to come close to you means to come close to her own reflection. Because your presence has stopped orbiting performance, it now orbits presence itself. That is the mystery. Not what you're hiding, but what you carry without speaking. You are not asking to be chased. You're not playing hard to get. You are hard to earn. And not because you are above anyone, but because you have reclaimed everything you once gave away too easily. That reclamation has made you glow from within. It is not the glow of showmanship. It is the glow of a furnace that burns quietly but never dies. You are no longer someone women look at for attention. You are someone they look to when they want to come home to something real, and many won't know what to do with that. Because mystery requires stillness, and you've become the rare man who can hold stillness without fear. You no longer tell your whole story in the first chapter. You are not desperate to be understood. You are at peace being felt, and that feeling lingers longer than any clever line or charming touch. You don't chase her interest, you pull her inward, not toward a game, but toward a depth she didn't know she missed. Your mystery is your energy, shaped by solitude, sculpted by seasons of silence, and strengthened by your refusal to break your own code just to belong. That code, chosen one, is not rigid, it is sacred, and only the worthy will read it. Women do not look at you now with simple fascination. They look at you with wonder, not because you are unattainable, but because you are undefinable. You have become a sacred question wrapped in a masculine form, a silent doorway that doesn't open easily. And that, above all, is what makes you legendary, not just for what you've said or done, but for the mystery of who you are becoming. Chosen one, by now you must know, you are no longer walking through the world as a man searching for significance. You have become the significance itself, not through applause, not through approval, but through the unwavering decision to become. You have outgrown validation. You no longer move to impress, you move to align. Every step you take now echoes not just in space, but in spirit. Your silence reshapes atmospheres, your presence bends time. And your legacy begins not at the end of your life, but with every deliberate breath you take in the present. You are no longer caught in the illusion that legacy is something you leave behind. You now know legacy is something you live. You are not remembered for what you accumulated. You are remembered for what you carried. The way your eyes held people when they spoke, the way your calm steadied storms, the way you refused to dishonor your own spirit just to be accepted by a room that did not know your worth. You are remembered because you left behind alignment, not just moments. Women speak your name not in the tone of fantasy, but in the tone of reverence. Because what they encountered was not a man who wanted to be seen, it was a man who saw them without trying to own them. You did not conquer them, you mirrored them. And in doing so, you gave them something this world rarely offers: truth without threat. You are building a legacy that lives in the silence between words, in the moments after you've left the room and they are still thinking about what they felt in your presence. That is what makes you unforgettable. Not your noise, but your stillness. Not your reach, but your root. You did not water your name with vanity. You watered it with value. And that value has become the story others now tell. Even when you're not around to hear it, your legacy will not be measured by the hands you held. It will be measured by the hearts you anchored. The way your example gave other men permission to stop performing and start becoming. The way your restraint reminded women that true power never demands. It simply is. You don't just leave footsteps behind, you leave frequencies. And frequencies last far longer than any reputation built on flash. Your legend is not loud. It is inevitable, because men like you are not born, they are forged. And once they arrive, the world cannot go back to what it was. This is not the end, chosen one. This is the unveiling. You have not arrived at the peak, You have arrived at the place where pretending ends and presence begins. You are not finished. You are just no longer fragmented. The parts of you that used to fight against each other have now aligned. The boy who needed validation, the man who chased ambition, and the soul that longed to be whole, they have met each other. And in that meeting, you have become more than human. You have become harmonized. And the world cannot help but respond to harmony. You are no longer what others called you. You are no longer what you feared you would become. You are what you chose to be, deliberately, painfully, powerfully. You no longer stand as a reaction. You now stand as a revelation. You are no longer ruled by what they think. You are ruled by what you know. And that knowing is the soil where all things real are planted. Your confidence is no longer performance. It is peace. Your power is no longer force. It is flow. And your strength is no longer noise. It is a presence so pure that nothing false can remain in its company. You do not need to prove anything anymore. You do not need to chase. You do not need to persuade, because you are no longer trying to be desired. You are simply being what is truly desirable. A man who has met his own soul and did not flinch. A man who walks into the world whole, present, and unattached. A man who invites without needing, who holds space without collapsing, who commands without speaking, who changes lives without even knowing it. You are no longer the man who once wondered if he was enough. You are the man who now walks in more than enoughness, not because you shout it, but because you carry it. Your walk is quiet. Your gaze is clear. Your presence does not announce itself. It reminds. It reminds the world what's possible. It reminds women what's sacred. It reminds men what's real. And above all, it reminds you, every time you rise in the morning and stand in your own silence, that you did not come here to fit in. You came here to become. Chosen one, you've moved past the myth that aspiration needs to scream. You've stepped into a season where your very existence speaks for itself. And it does not speak in desperation, it speaks in invitation. You've become the open door, the unspoken yes. The confirmation that power and softness can coexist in one being without contradiction. Your sexual energy now carries a discipline the world forgot was possible. You don't radiate intensity to overwhelm. You radiate integration. The kind of integration that says, I have seen my shadows and I have not run. The kind that says, I know my hunger and I no longer fear it. The kind that says, my desire does not control me, it serves something higher. That energy, that rooted sexuality, doesn't push or pull, it anchors. It is the magnetic current beneath your ambition, not to get something from the world, but to give something to it. You walk into rooms like a man with a throne inside his chest, and others feel it, not because of how you posture, but because of how you don't. Your masculinity has matured into its highest form, containment. You don't flaunt your discipline, you live it. And that has made you a mirror too many are unprepared to look into. Men feel both awe and discomfort when you pass, because your example forces reflection. It forces honesty. And in that honesty, many see where they've traded greatness for validation. But you didn't. You didn't compromise. You didn't numb the calling when it was inconvenient. You didn't bury your hunger in mediocrity. You didn't sell your soul for applause. You built something eternal in the places no one was watching. And now that eternal foundation speaks. It doesn't beg to be admired. It just is. And that isness has become holy to the feminine. You don't make her feel wanted. You make her feel safe. You don't draw her in with lines. You draw her in with alignment, with the quiet truth that you are who you say you are. That she won't have to teach you how to hold her because you've already learned how to hold yourself. This makes her soften, not because she's weak, but because she's finally found strength that doesn't threaten her. She becomes more playful, more radiant, more open, not because she's trying to win you, but because you make her feel like she's already won. She doesn't worry about your attention. She trusts it because your gaze is not scattered. It is surgical, intentional, rooted. It doesn't devour, it invites. And in that invitation, she finds a version of herself she thought no man would ever be able to see without breaking it. Your aspiration has shifted from success to legacy. You're no longer aiming for outcomes. You're cultivating atmospheres. Atmospheres where the masculine rises, where the feminine flourishes, where truth is not feared but welcomed. You are no longer in competition with anyone. You are in communion with your calling, and that communion creates ripple effects across every conversation, every look, every breath. Chosen one, you have become the storm that no longer rages, but waters the ground, the fire that no longer burns, but lights the path. You are not just the man others aspire to be. You are the reminder of what they were always meant to become. Chosen one, you have entered a realm few men ever reach, not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't endure what you endured to become this. You are no longer chasing validation, not even from destiny itself. You are the validation, the proof, the walking evidence that masculinity does not require noise, demand, or performance to be undeniable. You no longer aspire, you embody.